Hi, Jill. This is Marcy's Law, Why We Do What We Do interview series. I want to thank you so much for joining. It looks like we're all set and we're connected. So I just want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, you've been all over advocating for victims and survivors for many years now. And we are blessed to have you as an ally and a supporter of Marcy's Law. So I want to just start by thanking you for all the work that you've done specifically on behalf of Marcy's Law and by extension, all of the people of Tennessee and victims really all around the country. I know you've had a long day. You're a school teacher. You just came back from school and another meeting. So thank you so much again for being so generous with your time.
You're very welcome.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about two really important dates and significant dates in your life. And I'm going to start with a great one. March 20th of 2000. What happened that day? And tell us how it changed your life.
Oh, my precious girl was born, Emma Jane. First day of spring. She's our firstborn. She had to be induced. She was supposed to be born on St. Patrick's Day, but she waited till the first day of spring, which is a very appropriate. Ever since I wanted children, and when I was thinking about having a girl, I always knew I wanted her name her Emma. And her middle name, Jane, is my mom's first name, and then my grandmother's middle name. So she has a very special name that's brought down. And it was just an amazing day of not knowing what to expect, having your firstborn. The whole family's waiting, very excited. And she gets here and he holds her up. She's holding her little head up already, looking around the room. So we knew, here comes one little girl that's ready for the world and ready to go.
And she turned out to be kind of a big deal in her own words. And I know there's a little sign behind your head, and that was kind of one of Emma's things that she said, kind of joking around. She used to say, "I'm kind of a big deal."
And she wasn't overconfident by any means. It was just kind of like a little joke. She'd say, "Well, yeah, I am kind of a big deal." So it's funny how that all kind of took a bigger perspective later on.
Yeah, well, that's why I started with that beautiful day, because I think the love that a child sees in their mom's eyes the second that they're born, I think instills in them that they're a big deal.
Oh, yes.
And from the way that you beam and talk about Emma and her memory, it's clear why she felt that. So now, tell us a little bit about Emma as a little girl and as she grew up and started high school.
Okay. She was born very independent, wanted to do everything on her own from day one. A very sweet, nurturing young child, loved animals, loved just other children and other people. She wanted to take care of things and always played well on her own, wanted to learn and do things. She became very involved in dance and gymnastics growing up. She started to compete with gymnastics at the age of 4. So she was very competitive young lady, but also very determined and wanted to work hard through elementary school. And as she entered middle school, she decided to try out for cheer, which she had never done before, but her gymnastics background really helped her develop those skills as a cheerleader, and still worked very hard in school and grades. She really cared about her grades and doing the best she could do. And she did have to work hard for it. It wasn't something that came easy to her. School, she had to work hard for those A's, but was very much a perfectionist. Really had her small group of friends, and had her close knit that she had more friends as she got older and in middle school. And then as she continued her journey through high school, continued to cheer. She was so excited, the only freshman at Central High School that made the cheerleading squad. So she had worked really hard for these things. When she just found out she made it that day, was so sad for the ones that didn't make it, which I thought just shows her very caring personality. Her goals, she started got interested in being a nurse and wanted to be a baby nurse. She had a passion for young children and wanted to work hard to reach those goals. So she was working towards that in high school and cheering, and also starting to work part-time, and started driving in March of 2016 when she turned 16. So was very excited about that independence. She's just a very fun, loving, silly young lady who had a amazing smile and just a people pleaser and wanted people to be happy and worried about others.
Yeah, it's always fun for kids when they start to drive, and it's as fun as it is for them. That's how stressful it is for us.
Not fun when they're that independent.
Now, and she loved animals, you were telling me too.
Yes.
Yeah.
She had, I mean, and we had always animals in the house, and she just had a special little feeling for animals, and she would probably take them all in, which my sister's a veterinarian, so that might come in her genes, but we've always had animals. And so she always wanted to go like visit the shelter or visit where they sold puppies. And so she always wanted to go see and hold and own more.
And when she was at Central High, so she made the cheerleading team as a
Yes.
freshman, and so she was a cheerleader for the football team.
Yes, she was.
And at that time, was it at that time that she started to go out with someone on the football team when she was a freshman in high school?
She did. She met someone as a freshman in high school that was a football player at Central High School. And they started to talk at probably about the fall of her freshman year of 2014. So she did.
And you got to know this boy, you and your husband, and got to know him, and he would come to the house every now and
He would
again.
come to the house. It was very controlled situation, since Emma was only 14 years of age and was just a freshman in high school, and he was 2 years older. So it was pretty much more of a guidance in the house, and we know it, we can kind of see because she is so young.
So you could always keep your eyes on what was going on.
Yeah. That's important.
Yeah. So it was more like come over to the house after the football game and have some pizza.
Yes. Or with a group of friends. I didn't care if she was with a group of friends and I was taking and picking up, that kind of thing, where I had a little more control over the situation.
Yeah. And this is someone who, by all accounts, when you first met him, can you describe what your first impression was of her boyfriend? His name was Riley.
Riley, yes. Our first impression was he was very nice and polite. Seemed to do very academically well in school. Seemed to be, a hardworking person who's on the football team and has good grades, and seemed like he was very nice and polite, not only to us, but to Emma. So we thought kind of boy next door was our first impression. So
yeah, it seemed like almost like a textbook high school relationship with the high school football star and
yes.
the high school football cheerleader.
And I think that's what people see. They think, oh, that's so sweet. So
yeah. Now, as the years went on, they stayed together, and it became a little bit as she got to be a junior, and Riley had graduated, a little bit more of an off again, on again kind of relationship.
yes, and during those couple of years, it was kind of off and on. It was up and down, together, not together. But then I think as he moved away and didn't live right here, it got a little more difficult, and lifestyles change also. He's not in Knoxville anymore. But even during when he was at Central, it was a little here and go. And we noticed some things that, some red flags from the situation.
Yeah. And talk about that a little bit, Jill, when you say you notice red flags as a parent. I'm sure every parent out there now, and I know one of the things that you do, your voice is so strong to help empower women, and also to bring awareness and raise awareness to domestic situations like the one we're about to describe. What were some of the red flags, as you called it, or warning signs in the relationship?
As we noticed, as Emma was talking to Riley, we noticed a little bit more argumentative with us, which is perfectly normal for a teenage daughter and her parents when they're very independent, but it was more, she became a little more withdrawn and didn't want as much to do with us and her friends, which parents, you kind of think, okay, that's their age and they might become a little more withdrawn, but not with their friends. And she became a little bit more, she wouldn't do as many things with her friends. I felt like maybe there was a little bit of control. And we do check phones and check text messages, and some of the language and the controlling behavior about asking her what she's wearing or telling her not to wear certain clothing or degrading her family just became, those aren't things that someone that cares about you says to you. So we saw a lot of those, mostly through text, and a lot of her behavior just being more withdrawn from friends and with us. Just a total change in behavior, not just teenage behavior, but just a little more, I don't know, it just seemed like it was extreme with
Yeah.
her.
And with respect to the extreme nature of some of the messages, were there any in particular that stood out as very extreme, if not threatening?
Okay. One was wishing her death, I'll see your name in the obituary, because she wasn't doing something that he wanted her to do. I remember a time when I said no to something, he was, oh, I'll kill your mom one day. I mean, I just think those are very definite red flags that people get upset, but those aren't, and get mad, but I don't feel like most people are going to say things like that.
Yeah, and at some point, you and your husband said enough was enough, and
Yes.
stepped in and
Yes.
prevented the relationship from going forward.
Yes. Anyway, I mean, and when you do that, sometimes they do go behind your back and find other ways to talk and sneak, because they are teenagers. But finally at a certain point, she decided enough was enough, and she did break things off. And that's who ultimately has to decide, is the teenager or the person.
And Emma did that ultimately and decided that enough was enough, and tried her best to get out of the relationship. Yet Riley, this is when he was in college, continued to try to have contact with her.
He did. He would either try, if she blocked his number or blocked social media, he would attempt on other people's phones, use other people's phones to get a hold of her. So he would try to find any way he could to try to coax her back to him.
Now, I want to now move to another date, when I talked about a couple of dates, and this is, the first one was the best date, and this is the worst date.
Mm-hmm.
November 21st of 2016. Can you tell us how that day began for you?
Okay. We had gone to bed that night, and I don't and my husband had heard something in the middle of the night. We didn't know what it was. Went on. He left for work early. I got up at 6, a little before 6, getting ready. Emma had asked me to wake her up a little bit early because she needed to wash her hair. And I had started making their breakfast. I was packing lunches and went in there to wake her up. And normally I just have to, I'll turn on a little small light. Hey, Emma. And then she'll start moving around. And I noticed I didn't see any of that. And I tapped her knee, and she had still not made any movement. So I turn on a light and I start talking to her louder and going to her, and don't remember all of those things, but at that point I knew something was wrong and had checked for a pulse and everything. And that's when I had called 911. So very traumatic. Don't remember everything from that morning.
And you called 911, and law enforcement got there immediately.
Yes.
And I know that by some accounts that I have seen and read, that they were taping your house with crime scene tape and the perimeter of your house. And while they were doing that, you really still didn't know what was going on and what had happened to Emma. Is
I
that
did
right?
not know. And when you're thinking that, I didn't know if there was some health problem, because people will think, how did you not know? And it just wasn't obvious, to put it in those terms. You could not tell. You wouldn't have known. It just looked like she was sleeping. Nothing had happened. So at that point, at one point they did that, we had to exit the house, but I still had no idea until later what had happened to her.
And at some point later, you did find out what had happened. Talk about that.
We found out later from the detectives that the first thing they wanted us to know that Emma had not harmed herself, which had never really even entered my mind. And I automatically, the minute they told me that she had been shot, I mean, I already knew, because of just the situation and the things that had happened in that relationship. And in my heart, I guess I already knew immediately who had done that. So,
And as it turned out, it was Riley,
yes,
who had shot her from outside of the house.
yes, he had. He had come in through our backyard and shot twice, and the first one killed her. So,
And after that day, your life obviously has changed forever in every
yeah.
single way imaginable. And then you now have to be introduced to an entirely new landscape to navigate, which is the criminal justice system.
Yes.
Tell us how it feels and what your experience was like to all of a sudden now be identified as a survivor and a family member of a homicide victim, and what your day-to-day in the court system was like at that point.
It was a very confusing, because I didn't know really a whole lot about except for what you learn in school about what goes on in the system. And I mean, I remember the first time we sat down with our DA, our assistant DA, and then trying to just explain everything that happens. And you start hearing about all the accused rights. And it's a very overwhelming experience. You don't necessarily know all the terminology or all the different levels of what happens. And the good thing is you do get your victims coordinator that at least can start explaining some of those things to you, but it's a world of the unknown that you wish you didn't have to know. We always had amazing communication, which made that part easier, but it never made the whole process, because you're trying to lose an unimaginable loss, but at the same time, understand what's going on and what the steps are through this process. It was just, I just remember feeling like you're so overwhelmed. You almost don't have, not that you're not grieving, but it's like your whole focus becomes, what are the next steps in order for justice to happen? So it was a very, just the unknown was so overwhelming. And then you learn a lot of patience, because it's a lot of hurry up and wait with the courts, and dates keep on being put off. And so you keep on, you have to mentally prepare yourself to get ready to go, because you're going to see him there, in this family. And then sometimes it wouldn't happen, or sometimes it would be put off to another date. And we waited almost 2 years before we went to trial. So it was a long, drug out, which ours compared to a lot of people was very quick. So I feel not lucky, but we were blessed to have such a great communication system for us. with detectives who communicated and our victims coordinator, which helped through the process, which I can't imagine not having that. But still, both of those at the same time is just an overwhelming experience.
Yeah, and you're reliving it in a way, really literally, when you have to recount the story. And that's one of the things that you do now in Hope for Victims. It's an organization that we're familiar with at Marsy's Law, because the last guest I had was your friend Joan Berry, who is the founder of Hope for Victims. And one of the things that I know you guys do there is you hold the second Wednesday of every month. You have meetings, support group meetings for victims and their families. Could you tell us about how important you think that is, so you can kind of tell people what to expect and help them through the process of something like you said, which is so foreign?
And I know when my victims coordinator gave me Joan's name and gave me, so Emma died in November, and I was at a victims meeting in December, because those are the only people that understand and know what you are going through. Like Joan looks at you and she gets it. And so it helps you through not only your grieving process, but your process of going through the court system, because you can ask questions, and the group of people there that are there know exactly what you're going through and will listen. They can answer questions. And they were there so much for me through all of my questions and the unknown, because no one on the really outside world knows what you're going through. They can be there for you and they can listen, but they don't know how you're feeling, not only through the grieving, but having to go through the court system. So having those meetings is so important for new people too that are starting, because there's people there that can help them and answer questions and be there for them. Like in Joan, like what the whole group was for me.
Yes, it's a group or a club that that no one would ever want to be a member of.
No. I mean, but when you go there, you're being heard, and they totally get, when they look into your eyes and hug you, what you're feeling.
Yeah, and Joan put it this way. She had there's a quote from Joan that I've read that I think really sums it up when she talks about Hope for Victims and the Wednesday meetings. Our shared grief, she says, gives us a connection to each other that creates a bridge of understanding and compassion.
That is a great quote.
And I think about that the more I got to know Joan and you and the experiences that you have had, and how blessed we all are that you fight on behalf of other victims, because of all you're dealing with, to be able to share and help others in such a selfless way. We in the victims' rights community and everybody is so indebted to you guys for doing that. So I really appreciate that.
I don't know. I guess something takes over, that you feel like you all of a sudden have a different kind of, you're in the know of things that you don't want to be in the know of, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I remember I had seen an interview with you once, and somebody said, well, this time next year. And you said, I don't think about next year, and I don't even think about tomorrow. I just try to make it through today.
Yes, you do. And I mean, and that's what you have to do. You just have to do what works for you, and you figure out what that's going to be. It may be being a voice. It may be dealing with it privately. But I feel like I had so many people help us as a family too, the community. We were so blessed to have such a support system, that I would want to be a support system for other people.
Yeah, well, you really have. And, just recently, I think it was just a couple of days ago, that maybe even yesterday in the Tennessean, you had a really nice op-ed that capped off Domestic Violence Awareness Month, which was October. Yeah. And that's why, I thought it would be really appropriate to have you on today, which is the next day after Domestic Violence Awareness Month, because that's nationally recognized as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, October. But you don't end there. And so today's the day after Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And what you do is you raise awareness for domestic violence issues every single day. And so I thought it was important to have the very next day be the day that we talk to you, and just show you our gratitude. But the other thing I wanted to just talk to you about very briefly as we wrap up is your work for Marsy's Law and how important you think that is for the people of Tennessee, and how you're going to be helping get it to the last leg, which is getting through the state Senate in Tennessee in the next session that's coming up in January.
It is Marsy's Law and so important that victims don't have a voice, and they need a voice. And as a victim, you want to be contacted and know when things are happening with the criminal that is in prison. You want to know when they're getting out, what is going on. You shouldn't have to be worried about those things. And we should have those rights given to us and not have to worry about them. So Marsy's Law is so amazing with that, for victims to have that voice and have those rights, that the criminals get those rights through the court system. They have one right after another. So victims need the same rights and need that voice.
Yeah, and I think to your point, when you talked about when you first were introduced to the criminal justice system, and you had the great benefit of having a great team with a great victim witness advocate and great detectives and great people in the DA's office, but it is, I think, important that people have those rights as constitutional rights, as victims. So when, like you said, that one of the first things that you were instructed was all of the rights that the defendant has, all of the rights that the alleged murderer has at the time. And it would be nice for them to be able to complement that and say, and these are your constitutional rights as a victim.
I agree. It would be wonderful. And victims just need that. They need to feel safe and need to know that they don't have to worry about that they're going to be informed and know.
Yeah. And one of the last things I wanted to talk about was the way that Emma lives on and all that you do. I know she inspires you, and the whole idea behind this interview series is why we do what we do. Sadly, the best advocates around the nation, like yourself, for victims and survivors, are here because of terrible, tragic circumstances, such as the case with you and Emma. But I remember you were telling us about how much she wanted to be a nurse or a baby nurse. Tell us a little bit about how that has lived on in her name in the East Tennessee Children's Hospital, and how she's remembered as being an animal lover too.
We were contacted within a couple months after her death that how they, at Children's Hospital, they have NICU rooms and raise money for the NICU that they can be assigned to certain people. And so we raised enough money to have one of the NICU rooms named after Emma, which is so special since she wanted to be a NICU nurse. And Children's Hospital was so amazing. They gave us a tour of the rooms and then her room, and had a big ceremony when they opened up her room. And I also have friends that work at Children's that get to take care of babies in her room, which is super special to hear some of those stories. And I think she's there. And then Emma also loved animals. So actually the park is just down the street from us. So she has a dog park named after her. So, and she has a special display with her name and a little bit about Emma outside of the dog park. And she also has a brick outside Young Williams Animal Shelter, where we'll donate to and for the animals that need homes in the shelter. So her name, I think they're in places of things that meant a lot to Emma. So that's important for us to let her little light shine still.
And finally, there's also still at Central High an Emma Walker Scholarship Fund that was set up in her name, and you have to have a 3.0, and you have to be going into the healthcare field, right?
Yes.
And you have to go to college in Tennessee.
Yes, and and then we also have like a little excerpt from one of her papers about why you're, so they have like an essay they have to do, and we look at it as a team, and what their goals are and why they're really wanting to do what they do in the health field. So it's really it's a neat way for kids to live on through Emma, and it's a really neat to get to help other children out to go to school. And so we're going to be doing another fundraiser in the spring for the college scholarship, because we haven't done any since COVID. So we're going to work on that. And so it's something, another way that she can live on through her high school also. So it's exciting.
Well, it's amazing to see the way that that she smiles through you. You can
Oh,
really
thank
see
you.
it when you talk about her. It's really an incredible tribute, and I love that sign above your head. Big deal. What is really a big deal is what you do,
Thank
and the
you.
bravery and the courage that you show to continue to do it in light of all that you've been through. We are so blessed and so grateful for your help here at Marsy's Law, and we can't thank you enough, Jill.
Well, thank you for including me today.
All right, we'll be in touch soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jill.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.